Śrīmad Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Śrila Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Shitara Śrila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Ashtara Śrila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Śrila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Ashtara Śrila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Ashtara Śrila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Maha-Bhagavat Śrila Gokshara Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Śrila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shar Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shiva Parshad Vrinda ki jai. नाम अक्षय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदाते गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाय की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। Shinitai Gaur Premanande. Oh, and today is Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur's day, right? Let me just check. I think so. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur ki jai, yes. Tadiya Shubha Avirbhav Titi ki jai. Shnitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. Om Jnanatimirandasya. Oh, is this background noise way too loud? And Haribo, Raseshwari Mataji, and Gargaraj. Let me try to turn this down. I think I can. Advanced settings, noise suppression. Okay. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad-Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yang Prabrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahakatara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Tarabhobhinedur Stam Sarvabhuta Hridaya Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Shinvatang Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Hridantasto Yabhadrani Vidhunati Suritsatam Nashta Prayashvabhadreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tavai Vasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamam Charanantikam Bhaktya Vihina Aparadalaya Shiptashtakamaditaram kamadhe Kripa maitam sharanam prapanna vrinde namaste charanaravindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dandavat pranams Indira Mataji, Madhavi Didi, and Tarani Mataji. Dandavat pranams. Always feel extra blessed when there's a Prabhupada disciple with us, like yourself joining. Huh. Uh-oh, my internet doesn't look like it's very good though. Uh-oh. Okay, if the internet gets very unstable, send me a WhatsApp message. And then I can try to connect to my phone. They're plowing the field outside. I shut off noise suppression. Like I made it so that the noise is suppressed, but it might be still coming out. Actually, I can close my window. Anyways, if it's too loud, just let me know and I will do that. I'll close my window. Alright, so we're coming back to the story of the allegorical story of Purañjana. It keeps cutting, dang it. Okay. Man, today is not a good day for me to have internet problems. One second. Today's not a good day because we have a lot to read today. We're trying to read 6,300 words. Looks like it's okay right now. Hare Krishna, Pajumna Prabhu. Let me see if there's this devotee, a Achyuta Krishna, if he's downloading something. Okay. So, Purañjana searches for... Okay, so Narada begins telling about the story of Purañjana. So Purañjana searches for a suitable place to stay, and he goes to the city of 9 gates, which is the body. And Purañjana sees a beautiful woman, Puranjani, and there's a description of her. Purañjana flatters the woman and requests her to become his wife. Then Puranjani advocates pravritti marg, the path of material progress, and discourages nivritti marg, the path of renunciation, and happily agrees to become his, and she happily agrees to become his wife. And there's a description of their enjoyment in the city, and all the places in the city, all the 9 gates, and is represented by the holes in the body and other parts of the body. Then Puranjana fulfills all her desires, follows all her activities, and becomes her pet animal. Okay, now this is what we read yesterday. Link. Chapter 26 describes how the jiva sometimes gives up his proper intelligence under the influence of tamas and becomes attached to forbidden objects, and how he regains that discrimination later. Puranjana goes to hunt on his chariot. The analogy is a jiva in the material body. Once upon a time, King Puranjana went to the forest, mounting his chariot. Oh, Hari Bol, Nari Hari Prabhu, and then the pranams. Wow, 2 Prabhupada disciples. um, so once upon a time, King Purañjana went to the forest, mounting his chariot. And here are the features of the chariot. Purañjana is represented by the soul. The chariot is represented by the body. The bow is represented by absorption in being the doer and enjoyer. Purañjana's golden armor, the chariot's golden decorations, is represented by Rajagun. The quiver of unlimited arrows are the infinite material desires. The 2 explosive arrows are the ego, ahamta, I-ness, and possessiveness, mamata, minus. The 5 arrows are the 5 activities of the Gyanendriyas. The 5 horses, who are moving quickly, are the 5 Gyanendriyas, which are easily attracted by the senses. Okay, so one is the 5 activities of the Gyanendriyas, and then there's the 5 Gyanendriyas. And that refers to touch, smell, sight, hearing, like that. All those senses which you acquire knowledge. And the 2 wheels are the sinful and pious activities. The revolving axle is pradhan, the creation. The 3 flags are the 3 modes of material nature. The 5 supports are the 5 life airs, pran, apan, udan, saman, and vyan. The rein is the mind. The driver is the intelligence. The sitting place is the heart. The 2 poles to which the harness is fixed is lamentation and illusion, causes of bondage. The 7 coverings are the 7 dhatus, skin, muscle, fat, blood, marrow, bone, and semen. And 5 different motions of the chariot are the 5 activities of the kamendriyas. Wait, we didn't read all this yesterday, did we? Oh, we did. Yeah. Okay. The 5 obstacles, the 5 obstacles, the uneven roads, are the 5 kinds of air passing within the body. Oh, I just read that. The 11 commanders are 10 senses and the mind. The mind, which is the leader. The destination, the force named Panchaprastha, is the 5 sense objects. Okay. Purañjana hunts in the forest, and this is the jiva performing forbidden acts under ignorance. Giving up the company of his wife with difficulty, Purañjana proudly took up his bow and arrow and went to the forest, inspired to hunt. Note, hunting here represents woman hunting. Giving up his wife represents giving up religious principles for sense gratification. The bow and arrow represent attachment and hatred, rag and dvesh. Influenced by demoniac propensities, his heart became very hard and merciless, and without consideration, he killed wild animals with his sharp arrows. If the king was allowed to hunt according to scripture, why should the living entity be restricted from sense gratification? And then the answer is, if a king is too attracted to eating flesh, he may do so, but as per scriptural directions for a special but he should only do it as per scriptural directions for special shraddha rites. And only animals suitable for sacrifice should be killed. And it should be done only in the forest, and only as much as required. Note, similarly, a jiva is allowed to enjoy the sense objects as much as necessary, but not to the fullest extent. And here's the result of following and not following the regulations of scriptures. Any learned person who works according to the full knowledge of according to the knowledge of the Vedic scriptures is not contaminated by his activities and their reactions. A non-follower of the scriptural restrictions. One who acts whimsically, unrestrictedly, is influenced by pride and bound by those actions. Thus he falls down by the influence of the gunas, loses his intelligence, and sinks down into samsara. Merciful people were aggrieved and could not tolerate Purañjana's ghastly killing of so many animals. Purañjana killed many animals like rabbits, boars, buffaloes, wild cows, antelopes, and porcupines suitable for sacrifice. Thus, he became tired. Now, Purañjana returns home and appeases his aggrieved wife. How the jiva regains his dharmic intelligence. Okay, so that's where we are now. Haribol Manjari Didi. Cool, a call from Mayapur. Okay. This sound is really annoying. I'm just closing my window 1 second. Tatakshutrit parishranto nivrito grihame yivan kritasnano chitahara samvivesha gataklama. After this, the king, very much fatigued, hungry and thirsty, returned to his royal palace. After returning, he took bath and had an appropriate dinner. Then he took rest and thus became freed from all restlessness. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A materialistic person works throughout the whole week very, very hard. He is always asking, "Where is money? Where is money?" And then at the end of the week, he wants to retire from these activities and go to some secluded place to rest. King Purañjana returned to his home because he was very much fatigued from hunting animals in the forest. In this way, his conscience came to stop him from committing further sinful activities and make him return home. In Bhagavad Gita, materialistic persons are described as duskritina, which indicates those who are always engaged in sinful activities. When a person comes to his senses and understands how he's engaging in sinful activities, he returns to his conscience. Which is herein figuratively described as the palace. Generally, a materialistic person is infected by the material modes of passion and ignorance. The results of passion and ignorance are lust and greed. In the life of a materialist, activity means working in lust and greed. However, when he comes to his senses, he wants to retire. According to Vedic civilization, such retirement is positively recommended, and this portion of life is called vanaprastha. Retirement is absolutely necessary for a materialist who wants to become free from the activities of sinful life. King Purañjana's coming home, taking bath, and having had an appropriate dinner indicate that a materialistic person must retire from sinful activities and become purified by accepting a spiritual master and hearing from him about the values of life. If one would do this, he would feel completely refreshed, just as one feels after taking a bath. After receiving initiation from a bona fide spiritual master, one must abandon all kinds of sinful activities, namely illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat-eating. The word uchitahara used in this verse is very important. Uchita means appropriate. One must eat appropriately and not take after food as hogs take after stool. For a human being, there are eatables described in Bhagavad Gita 17:8 as sattvic ahar, are food in the mode of goodness. One should not indulge in eating food in the modes of passion and ignorance. This is called uchitahar, or appropriate eating. One who is always eating meat or drinking liquor, which is eating and drinking in passion and ignorance, must give these things up so that his real consciousness may be awakened. In this way, one may become peaceful and refreshed. If one is restless or fatigued, one cannot understand the science of God, as stated in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.2.20. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogata Bhagavatattva vijnana mukta sangasya jayate. Unless one can become free from the influence of passion and ignorance, he cannot be pacified. And without being pacified, one cannot understand the science of God. King Purañjana's returning home is indicative of a man's returning to his original consciousness, known as Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is absolutely necessary for one who has committed a lot of sinful activities, especially killing animals or hunting in the forest. Atmanam arhayam chakre dupale pasragadibi sadvalankrita sarvango mahishyam adhate mana. One second, I just want to follow along in my book also. Okay. After this, King Purañjana decorated his body with suitable ornaments. He also smeared scented sandalwood pulp all over his body and put on flower garlands. In this way, he became completely refreshed. After this, he began to search out his queen. Purport: when a man comes into good consciousness and accepts a saintly person as a spiritual master, he wears many Vedic instructions in the form of philosophies, stories, narrations about good devotees, and transactions between God and his devotees. In this way, a man becomes refreshed in mind, exactly like a person who smears scented sandalwood pulp all over his body and decorates himself with ornaments. These decorations may be compared to knowledge of religion and the self. Through such knowledge, one becomes detached from a materialistic way of life and engages himself in always hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and other Vedic literatures. The word sadvalankrita, used in this verse, indicates that one must be absorbed in knowledge gathered from the instructions of saintly persons. Just as King Purañjana began to search out his better half, the queen, who is decorated with knowledge and instructions from saintly persons, just as he began to search out his wife, his better half, the queen, one who is decorated with knowledge and instructions from saintly persons should try to search out his original consciousness, Krishna consciousness. One cannot return to Krishna consciousness unless he is favored by the instructions of a saintly person. Therefore, Srila Narottam Das Thakur sings, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Chittete Koriya Aikya. If one wants to become saintly, if we want to become saintly persons, or if we want to return to our original consciousness, we must associate with sadhu, a saintly person, shastra, authoritative Vedic literature, guru, a bona fide spiritual master. This is the process. Tripto hrishta sutriptascha kandarpa krishta manasa navyachashta vararoham grihinim grihamedhinim. Is it still cutting out, or is it pretty good now? Yeah, I was wondering about this also, Manjari. How she was despised. Yeah. After taking his dinner, oh shoot. Okay. After taking his dinner and having his thirst and hunger satisfied, King Purañjana felt some joy within his heart. Instead of being elevated to a higher consciousness, he became captivated by Cupid and was moved by a desire to find his wife, who kept him satisfied in his household life. Purport: this verse is very significant for those desiring to elevate themselves to a higher level of Krishna consciousness. When a person is initiated by a spiritual master, he changes his habits and does not eat undesirable eatables or engage in the eating of meat, the drinking of liquor, illicit sex, or gambling. Sattvic ahar, foodstuffs in the mode of goodness, are described in the Shastras as wheat, rice, vegetables, fruits, milk, sugar, and milk products. Simple food like rice, dal, chapatis, vegetables, milk, and sugar constitute a balanced diet. I love how Srila Prabhupada included sugar in a balanced diet. But sometimes it is found that an initiated person, in the name of prasad, eats very luxurious foodstuffs. Due to his past sinful life, he becomes attracted by Cupid and eats good food voraciously. Is that Cupid in the form of good food? It is clearly visible that when a neophyte in Krishna consciousness eats too much, he falls down. Instead of being elevated to pure Krishna consciousness, he becomes attracted by Cupid. Oh, okay. No, it's Cupid in the form of woman. So the so-called brahmachari becomes agitated by women, and the vanaprastha may again become captivated into having sex with his wife. Or he may begin to search out another wife. Just a little side note, my father, when he was temple president of the Laguna Beach Temple, during Srila Prabhupada's time, I think in the early 70s, they had a really strict raw food diet. They'd just eat, every year they'd try out a different diet, and they'd do that for 1 year. And so 1 year it was just fruits, and they ate a lot of sour cream, actually. It was fruits, sour cream, and dates. So it was a really bizarre diet, actually. But they weren't eating any grains, so every day was Ekadashi pretty much. And they'd only have a feast once a week, I think, for the Sunday feast. So that time there was a bunch of boys, ladies and men, all staying in one little temple together. And the whole time they did this diet. They changed it every year, but they did this diet for years. And then finally, when they changed the diet and just allowed everything again, very soon after that, everybody got married and fell down from their being brahmacharis and brahmacharinis. Just an interesting thing. How diet actually has a lot of effect on your sexual impulse. So a man may be captivated into a vanaprastha may be captivated into having sex with his wife, or he may begin to search out another wife. Due to some sentiment, he may give up his own life and come into Due to some sentiment, he may give up his own wife and come into the association of devotees and a spiritual master. But due to his past sinful life, he cannot stay. Instead of being elevated to Krishna consciousness, he falls down, being attracted by Cupid, and takes to another wife for sex enjoyment. The fall of the neophyte devotee from the path of Krishna consciousness down to material life is described in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.5.17 by Narad Muni. Tyaktva swadharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajan pakvo tapate tato yadi yatra kva bhadram abhuramushyakim ko varta apto bhajatam swadharmata. This indicates that although a neophyte devotee may fall down from the path of Krishna consciousness due to his immaturity, his service to Krishna never goes in vain. However, a person who remains steadfast in his family duty or so-called social or family obligation, but does not take to Krishna consciousness, receives no profit. One who comes to Krishna consciousness must be very cautious and refrain from prohibited activities, as defined by Rupa Goswami in his Upadeshamrita 2, verse 2. Attahara prayashascha prajalpa niyamagraha jana sangaschalolyam cha sharbir bhaktir vinashyati. A neophyte devotee should neither eat too much nor collect more money than necessary. Eating too much or collecting too much is called attahara. For such attahara, one must endeavor very much. This is called prayas. Superficially, one may show himself to be very much faithful to the rules and regulations, but at the same time not fixed in the regulative principles. This is called niyamagraha. By mixing with undesirable persons or janasanga, one becomes tainted with lust and greed and falls down from the path of devotional service. Antapura striyo prachar vimana iva vedishat apiva kushalam rama seva seshpari nam yatapura. At that time, King Purañjana was a little anxious, and he inquired from the household women, "My dear women, Are you and your mistresses all very happy like before, or not? Purport. In this verse, the word Vedishat indicates King Purañjana. When a man becomes refreshed by association with devotees and awakes to Krishna consciousness, he consults the activities of his mind, namely thinking, feeling, and willing, and decides whether he should return to his material activities or stay steady in spiritual consciousness. The word kushalam refers to that which is auspicious. One can make his home perfectly auspicious when he engages in devotional service to Lord Vishnu. When one is engaged in activities other than Vishnu Bhakti, or in other words, when one is engaged in material activities, he is always filled with anxieties. A sane man should consult his mind, its thinking, feeling, and willing processes, and decide how these processes should be utilized. Especially we should do this on Akadashi. I've read from Srila Bhāgavatam Goswami Maharaj. If one always thinks of Krishna, feels how to serve him, and wills to execute the order of Krishna, it should be known that he has taken good instruction from his intelligence, which is called the mother. Although the king was refreshed, he nonetheless inquired about his wife. Okay, Indira Mataji said it's good now. Thank God. The connection. Thus he was consulting, thinking, and willing how he could return to his steady, good consciousness. So thus he was consulting, thinking, and willing how he could return to his steady, good consciousness. The mind may suggest that by Vishaya Bhog, or sense enjoyment, one can become happy. But when one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness, he does not derive happiness from material activities. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 259. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment through the taste for sense but though the taste for sense objects remains, sorry guys, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. One cannot be unattached to the sense objects unless he finds better engagement in devotional service. Parang drishtva nivartate. One can cease from material activities only when one actually engages in devotional service. Such an important verse. Only can give up my material desires when I get better spiritual desires, but you can't just give them up on their own. That's why we're not just about renunciation. Na tatai tarhiro chante griheshu griha sampada yadina syad grihe mata patni va pati devata vyange rata iva pragya ko namasitati navat. Sorry. King Purañjana said, I do not understand why my household paraphernalia does not attract me as before. I think that there is neither a mother nor a devoted wife at home. The home is like a chariot without wheels. Where is the fool who will sit down on such an unknowable chariot? What fool will sit on such an unworkable chariot? I don't know what happened to anyways, I just need to focus a little bit more. Purport. The great politician Chanakya Pandit said, Mata yasya grihe nasti bharya chapriya vadini aranyam tena gantavyam yataranyam tata griham. If a person has neither a mother nor a pleasing wife at home, he should leave home and go to the forest, because for him there is no difference between the forest and home. The real mata, or mother, is devotional service to the Lord, and the real patni, or devoted wife, is a wife who helps her husband execute religious principles and devotional service. These two things are required for a happy home. Actually, a woman is supposed to be the energy of the man. Historically, in the backgrounds of every great man, there is either a mother or a wife. One's household life is very successful if he has both a good wife and mother. In such a case, everything about household affairs and all the paraphernalia in the house becomes very pleasing. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had both a good mother and pleasing wife, and he was very happy at home. Nonetheless, for the benefit of the whole human race, he took sannyasa and left both his mother and wife. In other words, it is essential that one have both a good mother and wife in order to become perfectly happy at home. Otherwise, home life has no meaning. Unless one is religiously guided by intelligence and renders devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his home can never become very pleasing to a saintly person. In other words, if a man has a good mother or a good wife, there is no need of his taking sannyas. That is, unless it is absolutely necessary, as it was for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's interesting. That's an interesting point to the Prabhupada made that. Vavartate salalana majantam vyasanarnave yamam udharate pragyam dipayanti pade pade. Kindly let me know the whereabouts of that beautiful woman who always saves me when I'm drowning in the ocean of danger. By giving me good intelligence at every step, she always saves me. Purport. There is no difference between a good wife and good intelligence. One who possesses good intelligence can deliberate properly and save himself from many dangerous conditions. In material existence, there is danger at every step. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 10:14-58, it is said, Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. This material world is not actually a place of residence for an intelligent person or a devotee, because here there is danger at every step. Vaikuntha is the real home for the devotee, where there is no anxiety and no danger. Good intelligence means becoming Krishna conscious. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said, Krishna je bhaje se boro chatur. Unless one is Krishna conscious, he cannot be called an intelligent person. Herein we see that King Purañjana was searching out after his good wife, who always helped him out of the dangerous situations that always occur in material existence. As already explained, a real wife is dharma patni. That is, a woman accepted in marriage by a ritualistic ceremony is called dharmapati, which signifies that she is accepted in terms of religious principles. Children born of dharmapatni are a woman married according to the religious principles, inherits the property of the father. But children born of a woman who is not properly married do not inherit the father's property. The word dharmapatni also refers to a chaste wife. A chaste wife is one who never had any connection with men before her marriage. Once a woman is given the freedom to mingle with all kinds of men in her youth, it is very difficult for her to keep chaste. She generally cannot remain chaste. When butter is brought into the proximity of fire, it melts. The woman is like fire, and man is like the butter. But if one gets a chaste wife, accepted through a religious marriage ritual, she can be of great help when one is threatened by the many dangerous situations of life. Actually, such a wife can become the source of all good intelligence. With such a good wife, the family's engagement in devotional service of the Lord actually makes a home a grihastha ashram, or a household dedicated to spiritual cultivation. Rama uchu naranata najanimas tatpriya yad vyavasati bhutale niravastare shayanam pashashatruhan. All the women address the king. O master of the citizens, we do not know why your dear wife has taken on this sort of existence. O killer of the enemies, kindly look, she is lying on the ground without bedding. We cannot understand why she is acting in this way. Purport. When a person is devoid of devotional service or Vishnu Bhakti, he takes to many sinful activities. King Purañjana left home, neglected his own wife, and engaged himself in killing animals. This is the position of all materialistic men. They do not care for a married chaste wife. They take the wife only as an instrument for sense enjoyment, not as a means for devotional service. To have unrestricted sex life, the karmis work very hard. They have concluded that the best course is to have sex with any woman and simply pay the price for her, as though she were a mercantile commodity. Thus they engage their energy in working very hard for such material acquisitions. Such materialistic people have lost their good intelligence. They must search out their intelligence within the heart. A person who does not have a chaste wife accepted by religious principles always has a bewildered intelligence. The wife of King Purañjana was lying on the ground because she was neglected by her husband. Actually, the woman must be always protected by her husband. We always speak of the goddess of fortune as being placed on the chest of Narayan. In other words, the wife must remain embraced by her husband. Thus she becomes beloved and well protected. Just as one saves his money and places it under his own personal protection, one should similarly protect his wife by his own personal supervision. Just as intelligence is always within the heart, so a beloved chaste wife should always have her place on the chest of a good husband. This is the proper relationship between husband and wife. A wife is therefore called aradhangani, or half the body. One cannot remain with only one leg. One cannot remain with only one leg, one hand, or only one side of the body. He must have two sides. Similarly, according to nature's way, husband and wife should live together. In the lower species of life, among birds and animals, it is seen that by nature's arrangement, the husband and wife live together. It is similarly ideal in human life for the husband and wife to live together. The home should be a place for devotional service, and the wife should be chaste and accepted by a ritualistic ceremony. In this way, one can become happy at home. Naraduvacha Purañjana samahishim nirakshavaddutam bhuvi tatsangon matita jnano vaiklavyam paramangyayo. The great sage Narad continued, My dear King Prachina, as soon as King Purañjana saw his queen lying on the ground, appearing like a mendicant, he immediately became bewildered. Purport. In this verse, the word avadutam is especially significant, for it refers to a mendicant who does not take care of his body. Since the queen was lying on the ground without bedding and proper dress, King Purañjana became very much aggrieved. In other words, he repented that he had neglected his intelligence and had engaged himself in the forest in killing animals. In other words, when one's good intelligence is separated or neglected, he fully engages into sinful activities. Due to neglecting one's good intelligence, or Krishna consciousness, one becomes bewildered and engages in sinful activities. Upon realizing this, a man becomes repentant. Such repentance is described by Narottam Das Thakur. Hari Hari Vipale Janama Goaino Manusha Janama Paya Radha Krishna Navajiya Janiya Shuneya Vishakhaino. Narottam Das Thakur herein says that he repents for having spoiled his human life and knowingly drunk poison. By not being Krishna conscious, one willingly drinks the poison of material life. The purport is that one certainly becomes addicted to sinful activities when he becomes devoid of his good chaste wife, or when he has lost his good sense and does not take to Krishna consciousness. Santavyam shlakshnaya vacha hridayena viduyata preyasya sneha samramba lingamatmanina bhyagat. The king, with a grieved mind, began to speak to his wife with very pleasing words. Although he was filled with regret and tried to pacify her, He could not see any symptom of anger caused by love within the heart of his beloved wife. Purport. The king very much regretted having left his queen and having gone to the forest to execute sinful activities. When a person regrets his sinful activities, the abandoning of Krishna consciousness and good intelligence, his path of deliverance from the path of material clutches is opened. As stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 5.5.5, Para bhavas tavad abodha jato yavan ajigyasata atmatattvam. When a person loses his Krishna consciousness and loses interest in self-realization, he must engage in sinful activities. All one's activities in a life devoid of Krishna consciousness simply lead to defeat and misuse of one's life. Naturally, one who comes to Krishna consciousness regrets his previous sinful activities in the human form. Only by this process can one be delivered from the clutches of nescience or ignorance in materialistic life. Anunyeta shanakar viranunayako vida pashparsha padayugalam ahachot sangalalitam. Because the king was very expert in flattery, he began to pacify his king very slowly. First he touched her 2 feet, then embraced her nicely, seating her on his lap, and began to speak as follows. Purport. One has to awaken his Krishna consciousness by first regretting his past deeds. Just as King Purañjana began to flatter his queen, one should, by deliberate consideration, raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness. To attain such an end, one must touch the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Krishna consciousness cannot be achieved by self-endeavor. One must therefore approach the self-realized Krishna-conscious person and touch his lotus feet. Prahlad Maharaj therefore said, Naishamatis-tavar urukramangrim sprishatanartha pagamo yadartha mahiya sampada rajobhishekam niskinchananam navrinitayavat. One cannot come to the things of Krishna consciousness unless he touches the dust of the lotus feet of a person who has become a Mahatma, a great devotee. This is the beginning of the surrendering process. Lord Krishna wants everyone to surrender unto him, and this surrendering process begins when one touches the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. By sincerely rendering service to a bona fide spiritual master, one begins his spiritual life in Krishna consciousness. Touching the lotus feet of a spiritual master means giving up one's false prestige and unnecessarily puffed up position in the material world. Those who remain in the darkness of material existence due to their falsely prestigious positions, so-called scientists and philosophers, are actually atheists. They do not know the ultimate cause of everything. Although bewildered, they are not ready to surrender themselves to the lotus feet of a person who knows things in their proper perspective. In other words, one cannot arouse Krishna consciousness simply by his own mental speculation. One must surrender to a bona fide spiritual master. Only this process will help one. Purañjana uvacha nunam takrita punyaste vrittayesh vishvararu shubhe Kritagāsvatmasat kritva shiksha dandam navyunjate. King Purañjana said, My dear beautiful wife, when a master accepts a servant as his own man, but does not punish him for his offenses, the servant must be considered unfortunate. Purport. According to Vedic civilization, domestic animals and servants are treated exactly like one's own children. Animals and children are sometimes punished Animals and children are sometimes punished not out of vengeance, but out of love. Similarly, a master sometimes punishes his servants, not out of vengeance, but out of love. to correct him and bring him to the right point. Thus, King Purañjana took his punishment dealt by his wife, the queen, as mercy upon him. He considered himself the most obedient servant of the queen. She was angry. She was angry at him for his sinful activities, namely hunting in the forest and leaving her at home. King Purañjana accepted the punishment as actual love and affection from his wife. In the same way, when a person is punished by the laws of nature, by the will of God, he should not be disturbed. A real devotee thinks in this way. When a devotee is put into an awkward position, he takes it as the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Ateno kampam susamikshamano punjana evatma kritam vipakam hridvag vapurir vidadan namaste jiveta mukti pade sadaivak. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 10:14-8. This verse states that the devotee accepts a reversal of his position in life as a benediction for the Lord. A reversal of his position in life, he accepts it as a benediction of the Lord, and consequently offers the Lord more obeisances and prayers, thinking that the punishment is due to his past misdeeds and that the Lord is punishing him very mildly. The punishment awarded by the state or by God for one's own faults is actually for one's benefit. In the Manu Samhita it is said that the king should be considered merciful when he condemns a murderer to death, because a murderer punished in this life becomes freed from the sinful activity, and in the next life takes birth cleared of all sins. If one accepts punishment as a reward dealt by the master, he becomes intelligent enough not to commit the same mistake again. Paramanugраho dando bhrityeshu prabhunarpita balo naveda tanvi bandhu krityam amarshana. My dear slender maiden, when a master chastises his servant, the servant should accept this as great mercy. One who becomes angry must be very foolish not to know that such is the duty of his friend. Purport. It is said that when a foolish man is instructed in something very nice, he generally cannot accept it. Indeed, he actually becomes angry. What is that verse? That statement? Srila Prabhupada just quoted it the other day. Upadesho hi murkanam prakavalya nakalpate, or something like that. Instructions given to a fool only serve to anger him, not pacify him. Such anger is compared to the poison of a serpent, for when a serpent is fed milk and bananas, its poison actually increases. Instead of becoming merciful or sober, the serpent increases its poisonous venom when fed nice foodstuffs. Similarly, when a fool is instructed, he does not rectify himself, but actually becomes angry. Satam mukam sudati suprivanuraga para vreda vilamba vilasad dasita valokam nilalakal upaskritam unasamsana svanam pradarshayamanyasvini valguvakyam. My dear wife, your teeth are very beautifully set, and your attractive features make you appear very thoughtful. Kindly give up your anger, be merciful upon me, and please smile upon me with loving attachment. When I see a smile on your beautiful face, and when I see your hair, which is as beautiful as the color blue, and see your raised nose and hear your sweet talk, you will become more beautiful to me, and thus attract me and oblige me. You are my most respected mistress. Purport. Oh, I don't know this word. An effeminate. What's this word? An effeminate, which means of a man having characteristics regarded as typical of a woman, unmanly. An unmanly husband. an unmanly husband, an effeminate husband, simply being attracted by the external beauty of his wife, tries to become her most obedient servant. Shripad Shankaracharya has therefore advised that we not become attracted by a lump of flesh and blood. The story is told that at one time a man, very much attracted to a beautiful woman, wooed the woman in such a way that she devised a plan to show him the ingredients of her beauty. This story is great. We used to do this on this drama. The woman made a date to see him, and before seeing him, she took a purgative. A purgative? Purgative. Purgative means having the effect of riding on one. Having the effect of ridding one of unwanted feelings and memories. Oh, no. Here it means a laxative. Okay. I think that means both things, maybe. Let's see. The woman made a date to see him, and before seeing him, she took a purgative. Oh yeah, a laxative. And that whole day and night, she simply passed stool. And she preserved that stool in a pot. The next night, when the man came to see her, she appeared very ugly and emaciated. When the man inquired from her about the woman with whom he had an engagement, she replied, "I am that very woman." The man refused to believe her, not knowing that she had lost all her beauty due to the violent purgative that caused her to pass stool day and night. When the man began to argue with her, the woman said that she was not looking beautiful because she was separated from the ingredients of her beauty. When the man asked her how she could be so separated, the woman said, "Come on, and I will show you." She then showed him the pot filled with liquid stool and vomit. Thus the man became aware that a beautiful woman is simply a lump of matter composed of blood, stool, urine, and similar other disgusting ingredients. That is the actual fact, but in a state of illusion, man becomes attracted by illusory beauty and becomes a victim of Maya. King Purañjana begged his queen to return to her original beauty. He tried to revive her, just as a living entity tries to revive his original consciousness, Krishna consciousness, which is very beautiful. All the features of the queen could be compared to the beautiful features of Krishna consciousness. When one returns to his original Krishna consciousness, he actually becomes steady, and his life becomes successful. Oh, it's 8 o'clock now, isn't it? All right. Maybe we should... Can I just read this one verse and then we'll finish here? We can finish the rest tomorrow. Yeah, I'm just going to go a little bit over time. Tasmin dade damamaham tavapirya patni yonyatra bhusura kulat krita kilpishashtam Pashena vita bhayamun muditam trilokyam anyatra vayamuraripor itaratra dasat. O hero's wife, kindly tell me if someone has offended you. Did he just indirectly call himself a hero? Anyways, I am prepared to give such a person punishment as long as he does not belong to the Brahman caste. But for the servant of Muraripu, Krishna, I excuse no one or beyond these three worlds. I excuse no one within or beyond these three worlds. No one can freely move after offending you, for I am prepared to punish him. Purport. According to Vedic civilization, a Brahman, or one who is properly qualified to understand the absolute truth, that is, one belonging to the most intelligent social order, as well as a devotee of Lord Krishna, who is known as Muradvisha, an enemy of the demon named Mura, is not subject to the rules and regulations of the state. In other words, upon breaking the laws of the state, everyone can be punished by the government except the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. Brahmins and Vaishnavas never transgress the laws of the state or the laws of nature, because they know perfectly well the resultant reactions caused by such lawbreaking. Even though they may sometimes appear to violate the laws, they are not to be punished by the king. This instruction was given to King Purañjana by Narad Muni. King Purañjana was a representative of King Purañjana, and Narad Muni was reminding King Purañjana of his forefather, Maharaj Prithu, who never chastised a Brahmin or a Vaishnava. One's pure intelligence or pure Krishna consciousness becomes polluted by material activities. Pure consciousness can be revived by the process of sacrifice, charity, pious activities, etc. But when one pollutes his Krishna consciousness by offending a Brahman or a Vaishnava, it is very difficult to revive. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has described the Vaishnava aparad, the offense to a Vaishnava, as the mad elephant offense. One should be very careful not to offend a Vaishnava or a Brahmin. Even the great yogi Durvasa was harassed by the Sudarshan Chakra when he offended the Vaishnava Maharaj Ambarish, who was neither a Brahmin nor a sannyasi, but an ordinary householder. Maharaj Ambarish was a Vaishnava, and consequently Durvasa Muni was chastised. The conclusion is that if Krishna consciousness is covered by material sins, one can eliminate the sins simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. But if one pollutes his Krishna consciousness by offending a Brahman or a Vaishnava, one cannot revive it until one properly atones for the sin by pleasing the offended Vaishnava or Brahman. This was the course that Durvasa Muni had to follow, for he surrendered unto Maharaj Ambarish. A Vaishnava aparad cannot be atoned for. By any means other than begging the pardon of the offended Vaishnava. Wow, that's a really good purport to end on. It's been really nice. Actually, just yesterday in our Shloka group, we learned a verse on the topic of Vaishnava aparad, and we had a really long, nice discussion on it. And we also just finished reading a couple articles on Vaishnava aparad and reading a full book about Vaishnava aparad. There's so much to speak about Vaishnava aparad, and that was very beautifully described by Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari, Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishto Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Chala Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishto Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishto Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishto Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Sorry, I'm really tired. Nitil Pravishto Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishto Mahabhagavat Srila Goraksharas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishto Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishto Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai, Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jeev Gopal Bhattadash Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai, नाम आचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदत्त गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्यामा कुंड की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री वृंदावन दास ठाकुर की जय। तदीय शुभ आविर्भाव तिथि की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवाय कृष्ण भक्ति परदेवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। Dandava pranams. Thanks for joining me. Oh, and that's the verse. Murk, murka, murk. Huh? I think I learned it in a different way. Yeah, the one I learned was a little bit different than that. But anyways, that's basically it. Murkayo padesho hi prakopaya nashanta. Thank you so much for joining. Bhavatarini and Nri Hari Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam, Sandhira Mataji, Rup Manjari, Prajumna Prabhu. I know where it is though, Rup Manjari. It is in the article by my Param Gurudev. I can pull it up really easily. Dandavat Pranams. And we almost, see today I got a little ambitious. I wanted to finish the whole chapter, but that would be 6,350 words, I think, or something like that. But we got close. We only have this one page and then we're finished with the chapter. But anyhow, I don't want to go way too overtime. So, yeah, see, that's the end of the chapter right there. But anyhow, tomorrow we'll catch up. Haribol.